that the cost of raising a prize pony could be the death of the prize pony. See, this is all going on all around us all the time, and we've got statistical studies that give a pretty good idea of what the numbers are. Okay? So where do we go from here? What do you want to talk about next?
Well,
now you could talk about the positive.
oh, positive.
Or not.
I like
Or
to
not.
talk about the positive.
Okay.
I believe that a lot of times we are trained in our home situations and through our schooling and that kind of thing to be sarcastic, to be cutting and that kind of stuff. And we do it in a joking way. And so we think, gosh, this is funny.
This is all for fun.
And it's all for fun. But you know something about the brain is that it doesn't recognize fun in that way. It hears the words and records the words. And it doesn't understand that you maybe don't mean the words that you're saying. So just as a tag in before we get into the positive things, I want to tell you that when you say demeaning things to yourself or others, and those demeaning things are even joking, they are taken as serious by your brain and your system. So
It's like talking to a computer. You go up to a computer and you tell it a joke. Is it going to laugh? See, it's not going to laugh. It receives data and it responds to the data.
That's right.
And in this case, it's going to respond by producing stress. And the stress is accompanied by a wide variety of stress hormones and other deadly things. So we need to be careful what we allow ourselves to accept in our thought life. We need to be extremely careful what we say with our mouth to ourselves, to others, in general. We need to be really careful to understand that all these things can bring life or death. See, I can be walking down the street and I can have a thought flit into my head and I can accept it because that's a normal thing to do, or I can stop and think, what did I just say? What did I just think? What was that thought? Now, when I respond to that thought and actually think about that thought, and I do have the ability to do that, and so do you, when I do that, I can either respond by saying, gee, that was a good thought. I received that. I like that thought. Or I can say, man, that thought was so stupid it must have come from a demon. I refuse to receive that thought. Dr. Leaf said that when we deliberately reject a thought, our head actually produces a little burst of warmth. And what she said was, it's kind of like you reject a thought that is a toxic thought, and you will actually cause it to go away like a little puff of warm air. It'll just go away. It doesn't plant. It doesn't produce another little tree. It doesn't produce branches on the tree. It doesn't produce anything in you. When you deliberately reject the thought, it just goes away. It has no effect on you whatsoever. Now that would apply to a good thought too, by the way. If you choose to reject a good thought, well, it's just going to go away, and it's not going to have any value to you. But the point is, you can choose. See? We hear people all the time telling us, all this stuff goes through my head, and I don't have any power over that. And the reaction is, yes, you do. You do have power over it. You have power to analyze every thought that goes through your head. You do.
As a matter of fact, the scripture tells us that we are to take every thought captive.
Yes, we are.
And the solution to this negative stuff is to begin to do that, to take every thought captive, to begin to use our minds to dwell on things that are edifying, things that are good, things that are pleasant. Laughter is wonderful medicine. That's what the scripture says. And it is. It actually helps you to produce those hormones that will flood your body with healing and restorative chemicals, things that help your body to recover from all of the negative things that have been going on. And so if we understand that we have the ability to change things, if we understand that laughter and pleasurable interaction with other people and hugs, things like that are beneficial for us, if we can listen to beautiful music or enjoy the scenery. The scenery in this area is gorgeous, and to enjoy the beautiful surroundings that we have, to just enjoy a flower. Those kinds of things actually are the things that promote the flooding of our bodies with enkephalins and endorphins and the things that will bring healing to our cells and to our bodies.
Did you know that a good belly laugh will actually take age off your body? A belly laugh, one belly laugh, will actually cause your body to become more youthful, because it will flood you with so many good things that the cells all over your body will benefit from it. And some old cells that are old cranky cells will just fade away and be replaced by good cells that are happy cells, and you'll go on. Laughing is good. Play is good. People who don't allow their children to play are killing their children. Literally. If you don't let kids play, they can't get rid of the stress that they're producing from normal life incidents, and it won't go away, and that stress will continue to build in here somewhere, and it will eventually kill them. Kids need to play. Even kids of our age.
Yes.
Yeah. Kids need to play. They need to have fun. They need to do creative things.
That's
they need
right.
to experiment with music, but without making it oppressive, so it becomes more stress. They need to play with art, so it doesn't become oppressive. They don't need to play video games. Video games are not designed to benefit the kids. Video games are designed to cause them to produce biochemicals that will be destructive. Did you know that? All those video games with all the violence and all the pooey stuff going on, all that produces the same kind of biochemicals as if they were out on the streets and they saw real violence going on and they had a real machine gun and they were killing real people, even though they know in their conscious that that's not real. Down in here somewhere, it's all being processed as though it's real. So you need to be really careful what you engage in. You need to be really careful what kids engage in. You need to understand that dreams, fantasies, imaginations, and scenarios are treated by your body the same way that a real life event would be treated.
Yes.
If you sit in your dark little place and think of all the bad things that have been done to you, and you think of all the bad people who have hurt you, and you sit there and you stew in all the juices of rebellion and anger and resentment and bitterness, it is as though those events are happening at that moment in time, and your body's producing all the chemicals associated with those events, and you are killing you. And this is where we get into the thesis that sin is suicide, because it's suicide. The more you stew, the more you allow yourself to go into that swamp of unhappiness, the more negative chemicals you're producing, and the more you are committing suicide. I wasn't going to but I'm going to just very quickly, because I see our clock is running down. It's amazing how that works. Maybe we should get stressed because the clock is going so fast.
I don't think so.
Anger and hostility produce hypertension, coronary artery disease, resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness, self-hatred, autoimmune disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome, panic attacks, mitral valve prolapse, heart palpitations, repressed anger, tension, migraine headaches, chronic back pain, MJ, and fibromyalgia. This is a short list. I've got lists that cover 2.5 pages. So this is what we're dealing with, folks. This is all good news because you have the power. You were given dominion. You were given authority. You can decide which thoughts to accept and which thoughts to reject. You can decide what comes out of your mouth. Are you blessing or are you cursing? You can decide which emotions you're going to accept. Did you know that you can actually stop an emotion, hit it off at the pass, and decide, no, I refuse to respond that way. I have a choice. I refuse. I'm going to respond in a different way. You can actually destroy the little trees in your brain that are based on all the negative stuff. You can actually destroy them. You can cover them over with good things. You can cover them over with love and peace and joy and all the stuff that we're told we're supposed to be producing. You can think about all the good things. Remember the scripture that says, think about these things. Well, it's a nice simple little list. It's not complicated. You can decide. John and Glenna aren't perfected, but John and Glenna are getting it. We are getting this. We are understanding that the way we've dealt with this stuff for several decades is not the way we have to go on dealing with it. We can start dealing with it in completely new ways. There was a time in my life when Minnie, the cat I was talking about, would have really bugged me. She and her attitudes and all her stuff. I would have gotten really irritated and frustrated and angry, and when Mom wasn't looking, I'd have given her a cute little kick. But the truth is, that doesn't even occur to me anymore. It really doesn't. I can find her antics amusing as a function of my will. I can find the guy out on the road that does stupid things amusing as a function of my will. I can choose not to watch the news as a function of my will. I can insulate myself from the stuff that will kill me as a function of my will. All I got to do is choose. God says, choose life or choose death. And we do it many times every day with the thoughts, the words, the emotions, the reactions, the attitudes, the expectations. When we walk into a room and somebody looks at us from across the room and gives us a funny look, and we assume, because we are the center of the universe, that it's all about us, and then we form judgments and attitudes based on how that person looked at us, and then we produce all those biochemicals in response. That's a choice. We don't have to choose that way. We don't have to judge the situation. We don't have to judge him, right?
Right. You know, there is an interesting sidelight to the power of thoughts and the power of words. I have been reading a book called about the study of water crystals and the effects that thoughts and words and photographs and prayers and things like that, music, have on water. Now, folks, you need to understand that we are somewhere between 70 and 50% water, depending upon our age.
Some of us are kind of grizzled, but
some of us have dried up a little bit. But anyway, the water really does receive the information that comes from words. This man did some experiments using bottles of water, and they all came from the same place. He's done a lot of different things, but and they took words, wrote them on a piece of paper, and attached them to the bottles with the word facing in toward the bottle, toward the water. One of them was love. And then what they did was they took the water and froze it so that they could see what kind of crystals it formed. And the one that had love written on it had beautiful, well-formed crystals that looked like a snowflake. And an interesting sidelight is the word love in different languages produces different beautiful crystals.
very similar.
Similar, but different. Then they put I hate you on one of them, or something similar to that, and taped it onto the bottle. They didn't say anything. They just taped the words onto the bottle. And then they took the water and they froze it, and they, under a microscope, looked at the crystals. And there was no crystalline shape. It was all chaotic and ugly. And they have done the same thing with classical music, like Beethoven and Mozart, and it forms beautiful crystals. They do heavy metal music, and it's all chaos. No crystals are formed, but it's a chaotic, ugly-looking stuff. They've done the same. They did the same thing with verbal blessing or verbal speaking, and it affected the water in much the same way that the words written did. And then they tried one where they had this Buddhist priest come, and he had seen a picture of water before the prayer was prayed, and water after the prayer was prayed, and the water afterwards was clear. And that stuck with him, so he wanted to try that. So being Japanese, he had a Buddhist priest come, and for an hour he repeated an incantation of blessing over this lake. It's a reservoir, actually, in Japan. And the reservoir has, during periods of the year, the reservoir has these blooms of algae that are just really ugly and smelly. And so this Buddhist priest was saying this incantation, and he did it for an hour, and then he stopped, and he was talking to the researcher who had photographed this whole thing. And the researcher's students were looking down in the water in the lake, and about 15 minutes after he had finished his incantation, they began to see the water clear. And what happened was, finally, they were able to see the plants on the bottom of the lake. So just to let you know, we're not proponents of Buddhism. No.
What they've done is that they've had people pray for the water and speak blessings and think blessings. And in one case, they had a beaker of their water in their lab, and they had people just think different things toward the water. And then they took another bottle of the same water out of the same reservoir, and they sent it to Germany. And they put it in a lab in Germany. And when they were thinking about this bottle, these kind of crystals grew. And when they were thinking about that bottle, the same crystals grew. So thoughts in the form of prayers, blessings, curses, whatever, can affect that water immediately present or distant. Now this is really important. How many times do we think bad things about other people? How many times do we think anger and resentment and bitterness toward people that aren't in our presence? How many times do we think of the fact that they are probably 70% water and possibly being impacted by our thoughts? There's a scripture, I think it's in Ecclesiastes, and it says, "Do not speak evil of the king, comma, or even think evil."